Welcome to the Utility Security Podcast, your command center for all things utility security. From power plant warriors to grid guardians and even curious citizens, this podcast is your essential briefing on keeping up to date with knowledge and insights for securing our nation's utilities. Expert intel through interviews with security chiefs, tech wizards, and policy shapers. Tune in as we explore the latest vulnerabilities, industry best practices, and inspiring stories of resilience from the frontline heroes keeping our grids secure.
DHS has people that will come in and do a survey for you. Understand, they make sure that you get other people to look at it as well. Not everyone that works for the federal government, not everyone that claims to be a security consultant, again, is an expert in the particular issues. You've got to look at things such as geography. Where is it located? Is it hilly? Is it flat? What does it serve? What is the criticalness of that particular station? There are so many variables that go into it that you need to have spend a little resources and getting someone to look at it and come up with practical and pragmatic approaches to solving the problem. Vendors is a big issue. Vendors can be some of the greatest resources of information possible. But like my son says a lot, when you sell a hammer, every problem's a nail. Whatever their solution is the solution. It may or may not be. You need to make sure you understand what the problem is and what exact vulnerability you're trying to solve before you bring in a vendor. Then once you have that decision, once you know what product you want to use, then their expertise is invaluable. I mean, their training, their knowledge of their product, but don't depend on them to know immediately what you need. I work with a lot of vendors, there are a lot of great people out there, but if you provide ballistic wall material, then what you want to do is you want to put up a ballistic wall. I mean, that's just great, but you can go broke putting that up. It's in the right place. It is very important. When it's not, it's a waste of money, and you haven't solved the problem. So you make sure the biggest thing is get eyes on your system. Find your vulnerabilities, not just substations, but other critical areas as well. Remember, there are 4 areas of security. Data, which is what we typically in utilities, when you talk about security, we think data, that's where everybody goes. We've got facilities, we got personnel, and then we got infrastructure. And infrastructure is substations. Yes, that's basically our heart, but that's not the only part of the entire system. There are other vulnerabilities that need to be considered as well.
Yeah, and a great way to transition to my next question. But before I do, I want to kind of shamelessly plug Utility Security Magazine and let all our listeners know that if you haven't already been reading the magazine since we launched last year, Jim Willis has been providing outstanding feature articles talking all about substation security, and I highly recommend you go and take a look and read those if you have not already, along with some awesome and outstanding columns too. So if you haven't read our 2024 issues, go to utilitysecurity.com, get your free subscription there to do that. So I mentioned transition, having to cover other events and consider other events or other locations, other properties and facilities, keeping them secure. Obviously, one thing that's been a headline for many years and has been an issue is mass shooting events and those happening in office buildings and facilities that utilities might own similar facilities to those. So in that threat landscape, what are some best practices you feel utilities should be doing to be better prepared for a mass shooting event, whether it's insider threat or coming from the outside?
Well, again, this is a complex issue and a complex problem, and a lot of people go at it the wrong way. There's a lot of times there's 2 different schools of thought. One is ignore it. It'll go away. Basically, bury your head in the sand. The other is let's go full bore. Let's do drills. Let's really get at it. And that can be a problem too. Back around 600 BC, I believe it was, Greek philosopher named Achilles made a statement that we don't rise to our level of expectations, we fall to our level of training. Of course, that's an Americanized version of it, but it's absolutely true. What we have seen over and over, if you do not train your employees to respond to violence, whether it's someone threatening with some type of bludgeon or knife or gunfire, they will not respond. They will basically just freeze, or they will not make good choices. Now, the problem is, how do you train? Again, you have to be very, very careful with your training. You need to train. You need to train those that are enthusiastic about doing this type of training, about doing active shooter training. You also have to train those that do not want to be involved, but they still need to know it. So you have to try to train both groups. And it can be so easy to focus on one to the detriment of the other. But we've got to train everyone. And I tell people, make sure you start off your training in the right way. Make sure that you turn around and don't get too aggressive, too gratuitous up front, too stressful up front. Build to the right level of stress, but only the right level of stress. I'm not a big fan of drills until they're done right. If you were to say, Curtis, you were a utility employee and you want me to come into your utility and let's do a drill, I'd try to push you off about a year. And I'd want to do some training up front, get the people used to the idea before we actually jumped into a drill, because done wrong, it can do as much harm than no training at all. And more than a few, there's an issue that took place a few years back, not far from where I live here on the East Coast. I'm not going to go deeper into that. You can probably figure out what I'm talking about. But where a safety worker came in, he had a great background. He was an ex-Marine officer. He was worked Department of Homeland Security. They came in and brought him in, has a utility, brought him into a mid-sized utility, has their security officer. He wanted to do active shooter training. And he and I had done some work before. He's a friend of mine, still is. And it's right before Thanksgiving. This back before COVID. And he said, well, I'm going to do this. And I said, well, make sure you temper it. Make sure, he said, you do it in the right manner, be a little careful how you go about it. He said, I've done it several times. I know how to do it. I said, yeah, but you got to remember, these aren't Marines. Anyway, he went ahead and did it. I've offered my help. He said, no, I've got it. So I went on my merry way. He did it just about a week before Thanksgiving that year. About 10 days after Thanksgiving, he had lost his job. He had done it there's so much pushback against the way he did it that he actually lost his job over it. You have to be careful how you do the training. And scaring people isn't training them. That's a big issue. But on the flip side, you need to train them. They need to know how to recognize a threat is taking place, that danger is happening. They need to respond to it effectively.
Well, outstanding answer. We're kind of near the end here. I always kind of end most interviews with what I call a crystal ball question, which is kind of, you could look into the future over the next 5-10 years at the utility security landscape. Where do you see changes happening? Where are new threats emerging? What do utility security professionals need to be planning for today that might be striking them tomorrow that they're not seeing?
Well, understand the landscape just like the battlefield landscape. One of the biggest changes of the battlefield landscape is a $100 drone. The same thing for us. One of the biggest issues we're going to face will be more and more use of drones for surveillance, for attack. We also see a change in perception. Utilities, at least less than a generation back, were looked at as benevolent providers of service. Now we're seen as adversaries. Now we're seen as malevolent entities that destroy the environment, that aren't, that are resisting change, that are doing belching coal smoke into the air. We have to realize that there will continue to be a change in the public perception. There will be evolving issues. AI is a good thing, and it's also a bad thing. I like the third law of Newtonian mechanics. For every action, there's an equal opposite reaction. For every good thing, there's a bad thing. The idea that AI will be used as a tool against us, absolutely true. The idea that drones will be used as a tool against us, absolutely true. On the other hand, drones make great inspection tools. I mean, there's a good and a bad for everything. We just have to be ready and prepared for it and realize we need to make sure all of our staff, inside, outside, executives, everyone, warehouse people, everyone has the security skills to match their technical skills. Until we get to that point, we will always be hurting. Now, we're about where we were with security as far as utilities go, where we were at in the 70s and 80s with safety. We knew it was an issue. We just didn't know how to handle it. Now, basically, it's built into part of the job. We've got to get the same way with security.
Fantastic insights, Jim. Really appreciate you taking time to join us for this podcast today. Lastly, before we leave, can you tell folks about your organization, how they can reach you if they want to connect?
All right. Well, of course, I'm the CEO of Indev Tactical. We're a consulting and training organization. Our primary focus is utilities. I do have other clients, but primarily about 90% of my work for the last several years has strictly been utilities. You can reach out and contact me directly at jim.willis, jim.willis at indevtactical.net, indevtactical.net. Or call me at 703-623-6819. I don't have a problem taking a call. I'll answer it. I'll give you a truthful answer. I either know it or don't know it, whatever your question is. But again, 703-623-6819.
Thanks so much, Jim. I really appreciate your time today. And thank you all for plugging in and listening to our podcast today. Stay safe and secure out there, everybody.
Don't forget to visit our website at utilitysecurity.com for exclusive intel, resources, and a community of fellow utility security professionals. Stay safe, stay informed, and stay tuned for your next mission briefing.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Utility Business Media and its employees. It is strongly recommended that you discuss any actions or policy changes with your company